الرسول إذا يبسم.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It really gives me immense pleasure and happiness to have with us a well-known writer, speaker and a teacher who works towards the betterment of the society. Youth for Future is pleased and honored to have with us Sister Yasmin Mogahed to speak a few words for us. Sister Yasmin.
Assalamu alaikum, dear Youth for Future members. I just wanted to give a short reflection and reminder for the youth about something that I think is a major problem and something that many of us suffer from, especially young people. It's a disease that the Prophet ﷺ warned us against, and it's a disease called hubb ad-dunya. It is the love of dunya. This disease is something that becomes, as the Prophet ﷺ tells us, it becomes the root of all other diseases, essentially, or it becomes the root of all evil. And that is because we become so attached to this life and materialism and the things of dunya, and because of that, it affects everything that we do, it affects everything that we think and how we view the world and how we interact with the world. And so one thing that I wanted to address was this specific aspect, because it has such a control over how we live our lives. When we love dunya, when we allow dunya to be our most beloved concern, or our most, our major focal point, our biggest concern, then we start to strive only towards dunya, and then we put aside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hereafter. The hereafter becomes secondary, Allah becomes secondary to what it is that we are striving for in dunya. Now, love of dunya can come in a lot of forms. Sometimes it's being so obsessed with our careers. Sometimes it's being so obsessed with getting more money. Sometimes it's being, so obsessed in just having physical pleasure. Running after, just trying to have fun, right? Trying to do things that give me physical pleasure, and I go from activity to activity, just trying to sort of, keep myself entertained or pleased, and it's this sort of worship of the physical pleasure. There's so many different forms in which love of dunya takes, and sometimes it evolves as we go through life, but essentially it's the same problem, is that we are striving just for this life. We're striving for things in this life. We're striving for the physical instead of the spiritual. We want to feed our bodies, we want to please our bodies, give ourselves physical pleasure, but we don't strive to give our hearts pleasure, to give our hearts food. Now, that brings me to the solution. So we first, we talk about the problem, and then we have to talk about the solution. The solution to this problem is that we have to come back to focus. And in order for us to come back to our ultimate purpose, which is that we are only in this life as a short stop, and it's like a person, as the Prophet ﷺ said, who's on a journey and stops in the shade of a tree for a while. And this whole life that we are spending on this earth is just that stop in the shade of a tree. And if we have to come back to realizing that, and then come back to our ultimate purpose, which is to be and please and love and know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is our ultimate purpose. And if we come back to that, then we can start to interact with the dunya in a healthy way, and no longer run after dunya, but instead have dunya in our hands and not in our hearts. In order to do that practically, we have to make the remembrance of Allah something that really penetrates our hearts and our lives. What that means is that every single day needs to be filled with the remembrance of Allah. When we move away from the remembrance of Allah through salah and through dua and through Quran and through istighfar, then what happens is we are suffocating our hearts. It's like a person who isn't breathing. What happens if a person doesn't breathe? If a person says, I'm not going to breathe today, maybe I'll breathe next week, that's not going to work, because a person needs oxygen to stay alive. In the same way that the heart needs dhikrullah, needs the remembrance of Allah to stay alive. And when we cut off that remembrance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we suffocate our hearts, and then our hearts become sick, and then eventually our hearts can die, just like a body can die if it doesn't have oxygen. So this is something we have to keep in mind, that in order to bring our hearts to proper life, and in order to be able to come back to our primary focus and our primary purpose in this life, which is to please Allah, we have to feed our hearts, and we have to give our hearts the oxygen, daily oxygen of the remembrance of Allah. We have to come back and be connected to the Quran. We have to come back to our prayers, to our salah. And when we do that and when we stick to it, then our hearts begin to change, and our hearts begin to have that life back in it, and all of a sudden we shift our focus, and that love of dunya slowly becomes replaced by the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When that happens, the heart goes from being, suffering from this sickness, and going back to being a healthy heart again. But the remembrance of Allah needs to be something real. A lot of us may read the Quran, but it doesn't go past our tongues. And there's definitely reward for every letter that you read of the Quran. However, the purpose of the Quran was to change our hearts. And our hearts cannot be changed if we don't understand what we're reading, if we have no relationship with what we're reading. So it's very important that when you read the Quran, you are also trying to understand and then trying to implement the Quran and understand why the Quran is being revealed, and what it has to do with you, because it is relevant to every single one of us. So creating a relationship with the Quran and creating a relationship with Allah through dua, through istighfar. One of the mistakes we make is we think that dua needs to only be in Arabic. And when we make dua only in Arabic, those who do not understand Arabic don't feel the dua when they are saying it. It's just words. And that's important that we can make dua in any language that we speak. The important thing is that the dua is an act of the heart. It is a connection, a communication between the heart and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it helps create that bond and that link between us and our Creator. Every single day, no matter where we are, we can make dua in whatever language we want. And then the salah. Remember that the salah is the foundation of our day, the foundation of our life, the foundation of our deen, and it is the first thing we will be asked about on the Day of Judgment. If our salah is in order, the Prophet ﷺ says that everything else will be, the person will be successful. And if the salah is not in order, the person will have failed. So these are the things, practical things that we can do to solve this problem that we are facing of this intense love for dunya that has entered our hearts. And then it has damaged us. It has made us do things against our own self-interest. Because when we run after dunya, we are only hurting ourselves. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this beneficial for you and for myself, and to guide all of the youth and all of this ummah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.